Oh, you're so cold. Oh my God, you're so cold. Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley, and I'm going to start a reading vlog, a romance reading vlog.
Who am I? What is this? What world are we in?
I read romance from time to time, but you know what? It's been a long while. I feel like this is the time. This is it. It's February. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Just bear with me. I want to read a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So I'm picking 4 books in kind of different subgenres of romance. I have some picked out already. I have one that I don't know what I'm gonna read for yet, but I am figuring that out as we speak. I have 4 categories that I wanna hit. The first one is a fantasy romance. I want to read a sci-fi romance, I want to read a contemporary romance, and I want to read a Regency or historical type romance as well. For the first 3, I already know what I'm reading. Fantasy romance, I want to read Radiance by Draven. The sci-fi romance that I want to read is Ruby Dixon's Ice Planet Barbarians. Mara from Books Like Well was a huge Ruby Dixon fan and always talks a lot about Ruby Dixon. So it's been kind of in the back of my mind, but then Gabby read it recently, and even though she didn't love it, I just feel like now's the time, like this is the time to read this book. So I'm gonna check it out. And then for my contemporary romance, I want to read It Happened One Summer by Tessa. I think it's gonna be funny, I think it's gonna be cute, and maybe steamy. For my historical fiction / Regency era, I don't want to read Bridgerton. I loved the show. I'm not interested in getting into Bridgerton right now. I was considering maybe Emma, maybe Wuthering Heights, maybe like some kind of classic, but I'm also could be intrigued by some other kind of historical romance that maybe isn't a classic but is set back in the day. I don't know. We'll see. I have reached out on one of the Facebook groups that I am in. I've reached out on Instagram to get suggestions for that, so we'll see where we end up with that. It's cold. It's freaking cold in this house right now. It's like 30 degrees outside. We have snow on the ground here in North Texas. It's weird, but I still have power, so I'm happy. Oh, I'm going to come up with a rating system for these books. I think what I want to do is figure out what I'm looking for in romance. So while romance books don't have to be incredibly steamy for me, what I really want is tension in a romance book. So that's absolutely got to be a category. I guess the reason that I don't read a whole lot of romance is because it tends to be so formulaic, even though I love a love story. The formula of it, they're all the same. It's like
they meet, they get to know each other, you have a certain trope within that, either they hate each other and then they fall in love, or they're best friends and they fall in love, or whatever have you. And then in the 3rd act, something happens, they split up, and then they end up getting back together.
I've read a couple romance books that push the boundaries of this formula, and I tended to like those more. So I'm hoping to find a book that doesn't quite follow that formula. So we're going to rate it based on whether or not they stray from this formula. And then I guess I'll say the characters. If the characters are not well fleshed out, if they're not multidimensional, if they're not flawed, then the book's gonna suck. So that's really like where I think the better romance books come from, that depth of character that you can really relate to. So yes, I like that. So we're gonna say tension, formula, and characters, and then maybe I'll just do one for like an X factor, like something that this book is doing that I haven't seen before, something special about it that stands out to me. That sounds good. Right now I'm gonna start reading Radiance by Draven. I don't know much about this. I've heard it recommended on BookTube a lot more when I used to read more fantasy. And so I'm kind of looking for that Sarah J. Maas fix, I guess, with this, even though they're not fae, but that kind of fantasy romance idea. From what I've heard of this, you've got these 2 people who are royalty of some kind, I think, some kind of royalty within their kingdoms. The woman is a human, the man is some kind of different species, and they have an arranged marriage. I guess when they meet each other, they're very unattracted to the other person. They're not even the same species, so they're like, ooh, what, you're, yuck. And then they slowly fall in love, and from what I understand, there is a lot of like really beautiful consent and this like growing bond that they find within one another, and it's supposed to be this just like heavenly romance. I don't know. I am really excited to get into this. So I need to get to Denver. He is so cold. Oh, it's cold out there, huh? Were you playing in the snow? I need to get some stuff done, so I'm just gonna pop in my audiobook and get to it. Well, hello. Was you relaxing in the sun? Oh, buddy. Just over halfway done with Radiance. It hasn't hooked me yet. So I don't know how I feel about it yet. It's not bad. There's some cool stuff going on in this world. Ildiko is the human wife and Kristin is the non-human husband. She's been traveling with him to his land to meet his family and like the king and queen and all of that. So it's very much have this monarchy within these lands. They're both being used. They're both kind of useless in their own kingdoms. Her uncle is the king of the Gari. His parents are the king and queen of Kai, but his older brother is in line for the throne and he has like several children, so they don't have to worry about making an heir or any of that, which seems kind of silly to me. Like if it was like Prince Poe from like the Graceling series where he's the 6th son, then that would make more sense, but it just seems like they're being a little silly that they're like, oh, he has a bunch of kids, don't worry about it, because there's only 2 brothers. I don't know. Anyway, there's some political maneuverings happening and they're just kind of getting to know each other and they're both very thoughtful, kind, clever. There's no love happening. There's a deep friendship building. I really hope we get some kind of tension, some kind of steam happening towards the end here, but it's very much a slow burn so far and I am on the precipice of not caring if I don't get that soon. You know what I mean? The Kai, Kristin's people have powers, but I guess like over the centuries, over the years, like each generation has less and less power. The only thing I know of that they can do so far is that they can like suck the memories and the soul of their dead into their bodies, hold it there, and then deliver it somewhere. They take it to this like temple where they keep all the memories of all their people. So there's no lost history of their people. They very much have this very deep, rich history of their peoples because of that. But like by doing that, by taking it into you, you go a little bit mad for a while, which is interesting. The Kai don't have pupils. They just have like black eyes. They're also nocturnal. So she's having to adjust to being awake at night. The Kai are basically blind during the day. Ildiko is proving to be useful, smart, independent. Kristin respects that in her. She's also funny, she's clever, she's witty. I like her, I like him, but I need something more. Okay, I'm trying to make this lighting work for me and it's just not. So excuse my lighting. Okay, I just finished Radiance. You're probably imagining that I'm upset because I didn't like it, but it's not true. It's not true. I actually loved it. I loved it. But listen, this is the first book in a series. What have I gotten myself into? What am I doing? What am I doing? Pretty much as soon as I last updated you guys, immediately it got hot. It got real hot. And I think it was even better for the fact that there was no tension before. When they realized that they loved each other, it was like fucking magical. Okay, this is editing Elizabeth. I need to pop in and explain everything that I just explained to you because for some reason I decided to hold my camera in my hand as I went through that entire wrap up of Radiance. It's hard for me to look at while I'm editing, so I'm just going to tell you what I thought. What was really cool was how their perception of beauty changed based on getting to know each other. They had this mutual respect from the start, which grew into affection, which grew into love, and it was just like so gorgeous and so freaking beautiful. And I loved that so much about this book. I thought it was glorious. They start to explore each other's bodies. Like they're different species and they have all the same parts technically, but he's got really sharp claws and fangs, and so he has to be very gentle with her. Things like kissing he can't really do in the normal way because he doesn't want to hurt her. They're just open with each other and saying, okay, what do you like? What do you not like? They're so invested in each other's enjoyment of their lovemaking, and so I just thought it was like perfect. It was perfect. I loved that part of it. Their relationship overall really reminded me of Katsa and Poe from the Graceling series. So if you're interested in more YA fantasy romance, check out the Graceling series. This by Kristin Cashore. This this series is amazing. But the book ended on such a cliffhanger because I didn't realize it was part of a series, and so I was so upset when it was over. There are some political things happening, and something happens to them. That's like the main conflict, whereas in your typical romance, they would have some kind of miscommunication trope or something along the way. They break up, get back together. That's not what happened. They had, because of these political affiliations, something happens to them that they have to kind of work their way through, and then they become stronger because of it. And then the book just ends on this really beautiful moment between the two of them, and it's just like done. There's an epilogue with the queen. We don't get her perspective throughout the whole book, but we get her perspective in this epilogue. She's clearly plotting, and so now I'm curious, like, what's gonna happen. I'm really upset that I don't know what's happening, and I really want to continue reading this series right now, but I've committed to this, so I'm not going to. So let's figure out our criteria for this book. Number one, we have the tension. Like I said before, there really wasn't any tension, but because of that, it was even better. It's really, really hard to rate this book based on these categories that I initially came up with. So I've got to give it a 1 for tension, but that doesn't really reflect how I feel about it as a whole. And then again, for the formula of this story, because it's fantasy and because it is the first book in a trilogy, we're not following the same formula. So I guess where it loses points for tension, it gains points for formula because it did not follow that strict formula that I was not wanting to see. So I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 for formula. And then we have characters. You know, I loved these 2 characters. I loved them so, so much. I loved the idea that they both are people without value to their kingdoms and their community. They don't have that value, but they find that value in each other. And when they come together, they are stronger for it. And it's just amazing. I just love it so much. But I will say that we don't get a whole lot from the side characters in this book. It's not like a Sarah J. Maas where you have this whole found family and this whole group of friends that you care about just as much. There are some. Kristin has a second in his forces who I can't remember her name, but she's like a really badass warrior, and I really liked her. And then you have like a little bit from the king and queen, but that's really all you get. It's kind of a smaller world. There's not a whole lot of world building. We still don't really know what the extent of these powers are, but I assume that's going to be addressed in the upcoming books. There's 2 more right now, and I think there's another one that's on its way that's being written. But I felt like these characters did have so much depth, and I believed them, and I believed their behavior was based on how they actually felt, which is really important to me. So I'm actually gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I kind of want to give it a 5 out of 5 for characters. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Fuck it. It's my system. I can do what I want. And then we have the X Factor. This book it has to get points for the X Factor because of how this relationship is formed and because of how they come together and just this beautiful imagining of love in general. I just found it so devastatingly heartwarming that I can't not give this 5 out of 5 for X Factor, because I've never read another book that's done a romance like this, and I just loved it so much. And if you guys have any recommendations for me, maybe I'll continue on this trend of reading books with these beautiful love stories. Okay, so I'm gonna pop you back over to my previous self now. Okay, so I just started It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. My initial reaction, I'm really annoyed by this main character, Piper. She's a Beverly Hills socialite. She cares a lot about her followers, her likes, her social media, parties, limelight, that sort of thing. She seems really shallow, and she just got dumped publicly. So she acted out and broke into a hotel rooftop pool where she threw this huge party and ended up in jail. And so her stepdad, who is the source of her wealth, punishes her by sending her to this small fishing town for 3 months to run her deceased biological father's bar. And her sister Hannah goes with her. I assume this is going to be a journey of her self-discovery and the evolution of herself. She'll probably learn there's more to life than parties and Prada, but she's bothering me. I hope my opinion will change. So far, she's met this guy, Brendan is his name, who is a fisherman. He's kind of feeling about her the way I'm feeling about her, I guess. And he's trying to scare her away But off the bat, I don't like him. I don't like her. I don't really like anybody, so we'll see what happens. Okay, I'm having a crisis. It's the next day. I'm about halfway done with It Happened One Summer. I'm so conflicted. Here's the thing. I'm personally in this process of, since I've been taking this gender, sexuality, women's studies class, I'm learning so much about the way the media and the patriarchy sets expectations for women, and the way that certain things in the media reinforce those binary expectations. And so I hate that like I can't have fun with this, but like all I can see is problematic things in this. And it's not like inherently problematic. Like it's not. A lot of people are gonna love this. A lot of people do love this. I'm just like, I can't get there right now. And so it's frustrating to me because I wanna have fun with this video and I wanna have fun with you guys, but it's not, I'm not there. It's not happening for me. Also, a lot of people, I haven't seen Schitt's Creek, and I know a lot of people love this main character because she reminds them of one of the main characters of Schitt's Creek. And so I feel like coming from that perspective, it's gonna make it a lot easier for you to understand where this character of Piper is coming from and relate to her in that aspect, but I don't have that either. So it's like, it's really hard for me to like her. I'm very frustrated by her. I'm also frustrated by Brendan because he's talking so much about her body, and then he hates her off the bat, and then seemingly out of nowhere, like she has this growth that's happening, and I know like that's where this is going. So it makes me hopeful that like I can get there with her too. But he hasn't seen that growth. And at some point he goes from hating her, and then someone calls her an airhead, and all of a sudden he's offended by it. And I'm like, where did that change happen? Like, how did you go from being annoyed with her to all of a sudden being interested in her, aside from the fact that he's constantly talking about her body? So it makes me think it's like this shallow thing where he's just into her body, thinks she's sexy, and that's just kind of perpetuating this idea of who she is at the beginning of her journey anyway. She makes it clear that she waxed her for this. And it's like, why? Why do we have to say that? Why do women have to look like children to be attractive? Like, I don't understand that. I don't understand his interest in her. So it's turning me off. I can't get into it, and it's frustrating. I do enjoy her experience in this kind of small fishing town, and where we have these like salt of the earth people. We have this history of her father's side of the family who she never knew, and she's kind of learning about her own history and her own past as she's learning about herself on this journey, and that's making me emotional. I do enjoy that part. It reminds me of home. It reminds me of Midwestern people. I'm trying not to like let these things bother me and just like enjoy the fact that this is just a romance book. It's for fun. It's smutty. It's got very specific objectives, and that is to make the downstairs tingle. And, you know, it's not supposed to hold all this weight that I'm giving it. And I understand that. It's just me, and I'm having a hard time with it. And especially after having just read Radiance, that had all of this discussion about not having any pressure or not judging each other or not holding these expectations on each other, and then still finding that deep love within that growing respect of each other. And like that book was so, I don't even know the word for it, but coming off of that, I feel like it's exacerbating my triggers, I guess. I don't know. Would that even be a trigger? I don't know. And I think the discussion of these type of things within romance especially kind of heightens that idea, because it's personal, you know, it's very personal. And I feel like those feelings that come along with meeting someone new, that come along with falling in love, tend to make us behave in ways that we wouldn't normally, because we are worried about what this other person's thinking of us, and are they thinking the same thing that we're thinking, and are we in the same place, and can I really be that vulnerable? So these ideas of the way that we are subconsciously inundated with all of these beliefs of how we should view ourselves is more prevalent, I feel like, in romance. It's in the forefront of these interactions between these characters. And so yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna I'm not going to go off on this diatribe, but I've already done that. So I'm going to stop it now. I'm going to continue this book, and I'm going to try to keep an open mind. And hopefully I'll love it. Hopefully I'll check back in and I'll be like, this book is amazing. So fingers crossed. Okay, we need to talk. about it happened last summer. It happened one summer. Something about a summer. I've already ejected this book from my brain.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Okay, I understand the hype. I understand why people like this. It's definitely saucy, it's raunchy. It gets the like feelings feeling down there, not up here. Piper does learn her life lessons. She does trade in her Gucci dress for a pair of comfy jeans. Yes, that all happens as I predicted, and I'll give her a little bit of credit for that. She has her awakening, shall we say. But I didn't buy it. I didn't buy any of it. Because I felt so disconnected at the beginning, and because I didn't believe Brendan's reasoning for falling in love with her to begin with, the entire rest of the book felt fake. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe their love. And then, so you know how when a guy like talks dirty in bed or like gets really assertive, and depending on who that guy is that says that, changes everything. It's either like really hot or it's cringy. So because of how I did not believe this from the beginning, every time Brendan was like talking saucy in the bedroom, I was just like, oh, I just couldn't. Denver, why are you laying in the sun and doing nothing before I turn my camera on, and then I start talking and you have to make a ruckus? Seriously? What are you doing? So yeah, I just couldn't get there. I couldn't get there for me, but I understand why people do like this. I understand why some people enjoy this. I'm not judging you for enjoying it. Like I said, I'm in a certain space. I just can't do it. And I'm really scared now that I just don't like romance anymore, that I'm just not gonna be able to enjoy romance anymore at all. I'm terrified actually. And I'm really scared for the next couple of books. So Piper builds like roots in this town. She builds relationships outside of Brendan. But overall, I felt like all of the characters in this book were two-dimensional, were shallow. The one thing that hooked me was this talk of this, you know, this sleepy fishing town and these kind of salt-of-the-earth people. We didn't go any deeper than surface level with any of that. She builds relationships with, I don't want to spoil anything, but like somebody in her past on her like dad's side. Even that felt really superficial to me. And then like we have all of her issues with her stepdad and her mom that are talked about in the beginning, and their distrust and all of that. Never mentioned again. Never once brought up again. And then her sister Hannah, it was like Tessa Bailey was like writing out the character of Hannah, and she made like 2 bullet points, and she was like, loves Piper, loves vinyl. That's her entire character. That's her entire being.
Nice.
Piper and vinyl. That's it. We know nothing else about Hannah. So before I continue to hate on this book, let's just go ahead and get into our criteria for this book, which is not going to be pretty, I won't lie. As far as the tension goes, I didn't feel it. I think people might feel it that read this who are not me, but because I didn't believe it, again, there was just nothing for me. Nothing did it for me for this book, so it's 1 out of 5 for the tension. If she had made that transformation and then he was like, wow, maybe she's deeper than I thought she was. No, that's not how it happened though. He didn't see any of that. One second he was just completely annoyed by her, and then the next second he's like, she's mine. No one must have her. I don't get it. I can't. Let's talk about the formula. This did everything that I thought it was going to do formula-wise. We have that quintessential 3rd act misunderstanding, breakup. I don't know if it would be considered miscommunication trope. Yeah, it is. So yeah, 1 out of 5. The characters. Again, 2-dimensional. Flawed? Yes. Redeemable? I don't know. Part of me wants to give her credit for coming through this transformation. I'm going to give it 2. I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5 for characters. And then X Factor. No, just no. No, this book did nothing special. It's smutty. That's about, it's only redeeming quality. 1 out of 5. So for our totals for this book, we have a whopping 5 out of 20 points. And again, that's just my opinion. Obviously, like, I know other people like this book, other people enjoy this book. I'm not judging you if you enjoy it. Do your thing. This is just strictly for me and my place in my life in the world right now and how I'm trying to navigate it. And it just didn't work for me. And that's okay. That's all right. But that's just what it is. So let's talk about the next book in this vlog, and that is Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. I started this morning. I haven't gotten that far into it. It seems to be a really short book, which is exciting. So I'm hoping I'll finish it today. Off the bat, I completely understand what Gabby was saying about like a horror scene, because it's really actually, it's strange because the tone of this narrator, it's told in first person, present tense, and our narrator is Georgie, and she's been abducted by aliens. So we're just following her as she's kind of figuring this out. The audiobook is interesting because the narrator, she's supposed to be from Florida, and the narrator has a pretty thick drawl. I've been to Florida many, many times, and I don't think I've ever heard an accent this thick from Florida, but it's not bothering me, so it's fine. The tone of our narrator, of Georgie, is, it's almost this like very lighthearted, I don't know how to explain it, damn it. It's almost like comical, like the way she's talking, the way her dialogue is written, the way she's thinking in her head. Like, she's very optimistic. You kind of have to be, and she turns out to be this like leader among this group of girls. But the tone is just very, why can't I think of words right now? Informal. It's very humorous and facetious. I can't pinpoint the word I'm looking for. Very light in tone and, God, it's gonna drive me nuts. Almost sarcastic. And so the things that are happening compared to the tone in which it's being told is an interesting juxtaposition. Because while the things that are happening are horrific, it's not hitting me as hard. And I think that is the point of it. I think that is the point of this kind of laid back tone. But I do think you should check trigger warnings for this. Basically, Georgia is abducted and she's a bank teller back on Earth. She goes to bed one night and she wakes up in this like cage with a bunch of other girls. They're all 22. They're all healthy and don't have family nearby. And so they're being collected for some reason. There's two different types of aliens on the ship. There's guards, which are like big. And then there's the smart ones who are just little tiny green men, like 3 foot tall. From what I've read so far, I don't think this is going to be spoilery because I haven't gotten really that far into it, but something happened, something went wrong with the ship, and so the aliens unloaded the cargo. They now find themselves on this planet that has oxygen, is snowy, it's wintry, and Georgia is taking the lead. She doesn't want to, but she finds herself the only one who's making smart choices. So she's like, fuck it, I'll be in charge. And so she's exploring this planet. That's basically where I'm at right now. So I think I like Georgie because of that, because I feel like if I were in that situation, that would be me. I would be like,
look, bitches, if you don't have any good ideas, like, somebody's got to take control here. We need to make some smart decisions. We got to find some food. We got to find some stuff. Fuck it, I'll go do it.
yeah, that's where I'm at. And I will check in with you guys later. Hopefully I'll finish this today. We'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, we have pubic hair. I just finished Ice Planet Barbarians. Oh, what a relief. I loved it. This book doesn't take itself seriously, so I immediately was taken out of my over-analytical headspace. Also, because it's aliens, I don't have to think about life things. Wow, I don't even know where to start with this. Okay, Georgie got more than she bargained for. And she meets Vectal, who is an Ice Planet Barbarian. We pretty much immediately get right into the sex. I don't know, like, I can't even think right now. I can't think. Vectal, it has blue skin and these like glowing blue eyes. Again, we have a man with no pupils, which is strange, but okay. And apparently their skin is like suede. He also has horns. He's 7 feet tall. I can't remember what his species is called, but they have this thing in their chests called a queen. So he keeps talking about his queen. She's like, what is your, I don't understand with the queen. They don't understand each other at all. Like, they don't speak the same language. So they're trying to communicate, but he greets her with a kiss and not on her lips. So she's like, what's happening? What's going on here? And then she was like, oh, but I kind of like it. Wait a second. So what had happened was his species, they have this qui in their chest. It starts to vibrate, resonate when they come in contact with their mate. And she is his mate. So we're getting kind of Sarah J. Maas vibes here with the whole mate thing, which is cool. I really like the mate trope. I don't know why. But she doesn't know that she's his mate because she doesn't speak his language. She's just like, okay, what's happening? And I think the overall tone of this it really helped me just like kind of, let's not think about what's actually happening. And also because in his mind, this is the most natural thing to him and to his people in general. My dog has got his front legs out of the dog door and his back legs inside. Denver, when that queen chooses your mate, the only thing you want is to protect them, to have sex with them, but also they are yours and you are their protector. And so they are getting to know each other very, very well. And meanwhile, we have the rest of the girls back where they crashed on this planet. So she's trying to explain to him,
we need to go help my friends. We need to help my friends.
I'm not going to tell you more about the plot because I want you to read it. It was a really short book, but apparently there are over 20 books in this series. And this book came out in 2017. So how, Ruby Dixon, how did you write 20 books in 5 years? Like, that's crazy to me. First, I'm intimidated by the amount of books, but also I'm like, it was quick, it was short. It's multiple POV. So we get a POV from Vectal as well. It kind of reminds me of The Humans. I don't know why, I just love that idea of having this completely foreign being and questioning their mannerisms, the way they behave, learning, and the way it's written is just, it's hilarious. So it reminds me of The Humans, but like sexy. The way he talks from his perspective is, it's so funny. Like he talks about coaxing her nectar from her body. He calls her my resonance. Can I please get my husband to call me my resonance? Don't call me babe, don't call me hun, call me my resonance. That is what I wish to be called now, from now on. And then as she's kind of giving in to him, she's like, oh shit, I have Stockholm syndrome now. I care about my captor, what's happening? I just thought it was really funny. It was super lighthearted and hot. I allowed myself to like feel the feels for this one and I had so much fun with it. So let's go ahead and rate this. First of all, let's see, we have tension. Well, again, I don't know if there was much tension here. I guess there is more than the last two books, but we kind of just get right into the action. Like there's not a whole lot of that waiting or lusting, especially. In fact, there's no waiting or lusting. It's just like, so I guess I have to give it a 1 again for tension. Wow. Considering tension is what I wanted when I started this, I'm really not getting much of that. For the formula, it completely did not follow that formula that I was looking to avoid at all. And again, I think because it's sci-fi, because it's the first of a series, and it doesn't leave you wanting like Radiance did. I think it's probably set up where each book has its own like story. I'm really excited to see where this goes actually, because there's lots of different people that we can get a point of view from. So I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 for formula. Characters, I really like these characters too. I can't say anything bad about either one of the characters. I felt like Vectal was noble, even though he was confused for most of the time, just wants to take care of his mate, you know? And then Georgie was hilarious and a leader, kind of sassy. I liked her character a lot too. I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 for characters. And then lastly, we have the X Factor. I think the X Factor for this is just alien porn. I've never experienced anything like this. How strange. How strange. I'm gonna get 5 out of 5 for the X Factor as well. We have a tie. This is tied with Radiance at 15 out of 20. Interesting. Interesting. These two books are definitely in the lead. I think it's obvious. Okay, so I still don't know what I'm reading next for my historical / Regency. So I need to do some research and I will probably check back in the morning and let you know what book I plan on reading. Holy shit. Historical fiction is its own fucking solar system. It's its own galaxy. How am I supposed to navigate this on my own? Okay, so for the last like 12 hours, I've done nothing but inundate myself with historical fiction. I want to preface this by saying I don't like historical fiction. And why am I doing this? And if there is a difficult way to do something, rest assured, I'm going to find the hardest way and I'm going to suffer myself through that because that is just who I am. But there are some things that I like about historical fiction. I've found that I do like Jane Austen. I like Pride and Prejudice. I figured if it has some kind of romance in it, I might be interested. If it has a magical aspect of some kind, I might be interested. If it has time travel of some kind, I might be interested. Some TV shows that I've enjoyed that were historical fiction are Bridgerton, Downton Abbey, Outlander. I don't know if Downton Abbey is a book, but the other two are. I started reading Outlander, the first one, and it pretty much exactly mimicked the first season of Outlander, so I just couldn't get there with it, so I put it down. I shouldn't have saved this book for last because I'm terrified that I'm not going to like this, and which is why I've spent the last 12 hours of my life researching historical fiction, and here's what I've learned. In historical romance books, you don't necessarily have to read them in order, which is weird, and I'm not going to read something that's not the first book because I just feel weird about it. I'm not going to do that. Also, I've learned the difference between a wallflower and a spinster. A wallflower is someone who's in like their second or third season, which is when you're trying to find a husband, and a spinster is someone who's already given up on finding a husband. I've also learned what a rake is, which is basically a player or, you know, a ladies' man or some guy with a really bad reputation. I've learned a ton of historical romance authors, such as Tessa Dare, Sarah McLean, Courtney Milan, Lisa Kleypas, Lorraine Heath, Sophie Jordan, Eloise James. I've watched countless YouTube videos, looked for lists online. I have asked for suggestions on Instagram, on Facebook, and I don't want to read any of them. I think these covers are horrendous. These covers, I hate every single one. I am more inclined to read something with a cover that looks more like this, but these ones generally have a much lower rating on Goodreads, so I don't trust them. I ended up specifically searching for feminist historical fiction romance because I'm a little concerned after my experience with It Happened One Summer, especially if it's set in this Regency era, that it's going to trigger me, and I want to enjoy this. So I'm like, how do I pick a book? Do I pick it based on the cover? Do I pick it based on a synopsis that actually sounds good to me? Do I pick it based on the highest rated on Goodreads? Do I pick it based on a recommendation? I narrowed it down to 4 books, and they are The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare, 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake, Marry Everything, The Flapper Covenant, which is not Regency, it's like 1920s, but it has time travel, so that interested me, or The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. So I wanted to ask specific people and put it in the hands of someone else to choose this book for me. So I asked 4 of my friends, Beth from Beth's All Booked, I asked Ashley from Ashley's Little Library, I asked James from James's Space, and I asked my best friend Sandra. And each one of them gave me a different answer.
Oh my God!
This rests in the hands of someone capable and strong, trustworthy and true, and that is my mother. So I called my mother, and this is what she said.
Hi, honey.
Hey, Mom.
What's going on?
I've like been scouring trying to figure out what book to pick, and I can't decide. So I want to give you, I've picked 4, like I narrowed it down to 4. So I want to give you the synopses, and then whichever one you choose, I'm going to read.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Can Lucy and Catherine find the strength to stay together, or are they doomed to be star-crossed lovers?
That's the one I would do.
Really?
I like that one, but
Okay.
I think it sounds better actually than any of them
Okay.
to me.
So I've already asked 4 people to pick one of these, and they've all picked
A different one?
a different one. Yes. So you're the tiebreaker.
Oh, that's funny.
But I'm glad you picked that one. The shock that my mom picked the female-female romance. I could not be more proud. So we're going to be reading The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. This was recommended by Chandler Ainsley. She said it was very fight the patriarchy. So I think I'm gonna like it. So we're following Lucy and Catherine. Lucy is at her ex-lover's sham of a wedding. So I guess it's a woman who's marrying a man now. She just wants to be anywhere else. And so she finds this letter from the Countess of Moth looking for someone to translate this astronomy text from French. So she decides she's gonna do it so she can get the hell out of Dodge. The woman who wants this translated is Catherine. Her deceased husband's legacy can be summed up in this French scientific astronomy text. They end up falling in love. I'm gonna read it. I have read a couple of reviews that said it was a little bit science heavy. That kind of thing doesn't typically bother me. So I'm excited to get into it. I'm gonna start it now. I'll check in when I'm halfway through. My God, this video is gonna be long. Okay, I did not check in halfway through the book. I have now finished it. So let's talk about it. I enjoyed this. It wasn't earth-shattering, but I definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was gonna go differently. I thought that because Lucy is comfortable with her sexuality and because Catherine was married to a man, has never been with a woman, I thought it was gonna be more of a like Lucy testing the waters and Catherine coming to the realization that maybe she likes women as well. And that did happen, but Catherine was the one who instigated the relationship with it, which I thought was interesting. When you put it into context with the times, Catherine was lucky. Well, she was lucky in a sense because she was married and her husband died. She then had control of her wealth. She was not being pushed to marry again. She was pretty much as independent. I think as a widow back then, that is like the height of your independence for a woman because then you have control over your assets, control over your home, control of yourself. Lucy, I really liked as a character because she considered herself an astronomist. Astronomist? I think that's the word for it. During this time, men wouldn't even fathom the idea of a woman being an astronomer. That's it. Her father was a famous astronomer and she, as he got older, started taking over the mathematics, started taking over the correspondence letters with the other people in the society. But she never got credit for that. She never told anybody. And so when this opportunity comes up for her to translate this astronomy text from French to English, she takes it, but she has to kind of convince the men in the society of her worth. And of course, they immediately shun her because she's a woman. There's a lot of talk about art and science and the overlap between the two and the differences between the two. And I like that conversation. I thought that was cool. Music is an art, for example, but it can be broken down scientifically, which is interesting. Then you get into jazz, how jazz is a defiance against that scientific logic of music. So that whole area of discussion I just think is really intriguing. The story focused a lot on the politics of the times. It did focus a lot on the science, which I enjoyed and I liked that part. But it almost took over the romance side of the story. So I understand why the reviewers said that. It's just not love heavy. Lucy is able to kind of put her foot down and say, it is my right to be acknowledged. I have put in the work. I am smart. I refuse to be pushed aside. And I loved that. As the book went on, we kind of got to see how everything that she thought she knew about astronomy was told through the lens of a man. So once she started to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, she actually learned that a lot of these discoveries, a lot of these ideas came from women who just were not acknowledged. So I thought that was really cool. And it was interesting how the dynamics changed for Catherine when she decided she wanted to take on a female lover. Her husband, who had passed, definitely took advantage of her, was kind of using her for her money because she had this inheritance and there was a stipulation that she remained in control of the money when she was married. And so when her husband married her and she didn't turn over that control to him, he was mad and became bitter over time and didn't treat her right. And even so, she let go of a lot of things that were important to her to appease him because of his ambition. And so she's a little bit afraid when she sees that Lucy has the same ambition because of the consequences that she's experienced from that with her husband. So when she decides to take on a female lover, it's only positives from there because there's no way we can get married. I don't have to worry about giving up my wealth. I don't have to worry about being submissive to a man. I can just live my life and still have this love. I think she realized that she had always been attracted to women, but just hadn't fed that side of her, had kind of pushed that side of her back. But then once they start falling in love, the problem is reversed because she wants to show Lucy that she's committed, but there's no way to do that because they can't get married. So there's this inner struggle within Catherine that she doesn't want to give up too much, but she also wants to be able to prove her devotion. She wants to be able to make her feel important to her, but because of the society they live in, she can't do that. Overall, I thought it was lovely. I didn't swoon, but I liked the story. So for tension, I will say there was a little more tension in this. I still did not get that tension that I've been longing for. So we're gonna have to figure out a way to get that. But I'm gonna give this 2 out of 5 for tension. For formula, it did follow kind of this formula that we were discussing. There was more depth to it, I think, because of the other plot lines that are going on. It was a more nuanced version of this formula. So for that, I'm gonna give it 3 out of 5 beakers. These characters, even though I wasn't as committed to their relationship and the steam, I really liked both of these characters. They were very distinct. They both had their own flaws, and there was definite reasoning behind the things that they were thinking and the conflicts that they were dealing with. So I really appreciated that. I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 for characters. And for the X Factor, I really appreciate that this is a feminist telling of this story about these women. So I think that makes this stand out, but not in a way that is mind-blowing. So I'm gonna give this 3 out of 5 for X Factor. And I think it's fair to say that this probably would slot right into that 3rd place for me. Let's look at all of these books as a whole. If I were to rank these, we obviously have Ice Planet Barbarians and Radiance in the lead with 15 out of 20. Then we have The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics next with 13 out of 20. And then lastly, we have It Happened One Summer in last place with 5 out of 20. Out of those first two, I think the one that I connected with the most was definitely Radiance. We have gone through 4 genres. We have gone through fantasy, sci-fi, contemporary, and historical romance. The one that worked best for me was fantasy. Am I surprised? No, I don't think I'm surprised. There's something about fantasy and sci-fi, which I think is why they both worked for me, that allows me to step outside of everyday pressures of everyday life, because it's not something that's ever going to happen. It allows me to step outside of my head, step outside of my presumptions, my thoughts, all of the mess that's happening in here, and be able to just focus on that love story, focus on the relationship, focus on the steam, even in the case of Ice Planet Barbarians. When I read It Happened One Summer, I really thought that it wasn't working for me because I didn't connect to the characters. But then when I read Ice Planet Barbarians, I realized that I hadn't really connected with the characters either, but it was working for me just fine. So the distinction there, I guess, would have to be the tone and the way that kind of sets up my expectations for getting into the book, which I never placed that much weight on before. One of you guys asked me if I thought plot or characters was more important in a story, and at one point I would have said plot. I've read a few stories that were very character driven that I just didn't get into, and so I really thought, like, I need that plot. Idealistically, I need both. Like, I want both. But when it comes down to it, if the characters aren't working for me, then the plot doesn't matter to me. So I do think it's more important for me that the characters are, like, they don't have to be likable. Well, yeah, I stand by that. They don't have to be likable. They can make bad decisions, and they can be very flawed. In fact, I want them to be very flawed. But even though they make poor choices, I want to see why they're making those choices. And if I can understand that, then I can get down with it. I think that's safe to say. Will I be picking up more contemporary romance after this? I'm sure I will. There have been plenty of contemporary romances that I have really loved. Will I be picking up more historical romance after this? I probably won't reach for it. If somebody talks me into a specific book, I may be able to get there, but I don't think I'm gonna reach for it, and that's just my personal preference. I'm glad I sat down to do this because now I have a better idea of what kind of romance I like, what I'm looking for in romance. I don't necessarily need that tension that I thought I needed, but I do need to connect to the characters. And I think that follows me across all genres. Also, the tone is very important to me, apparently, and it definitely affects my reading experience, so that's an interesting thing to learn, and I'm glad I've learned these things about myself. Let me know what your favorite subgenre of romance is, if you like romance at all. If you liked this video, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate you all. Oh, and I just hit 3,000 subscribers, which is insane. So thank you. Thank you. If you're new to my channel, like, when I started this channel, my dreams were much, much smaller than this. And it's blowing my mind that I have 3,000 subscribers. Like, it's beyond, just beyond anything I imagined. So I love being part of this community. I love talking to you guys about these books, about reading, about tastes, about everything book related and beyond. I cannot thank you enough. I appreciate you so much. And don't forget that life is short. So read Riley. Cheers and goodbye.